Good morning, Jamaica. I want to use this opportunity to welcome all Jamaicans wherever you are, home and whether home or in the diaspora. I want to invite you to the Lennie Robbins YouTube channel. Know your politics. Let's come together to create a better understanding for each other by watching what our politicians do and what they say. In essence, I want to invite you all to the Watch What They Do channel. And watch what they do at Lennie Robbins YouTube channel. For quite some time now, I've been contemplating on a few issues, on a particular issue that relates to something that happens in our parliament in Jamaica a couple of days ago, or a week or two ago. But in order for me to speak on that issue that happened in Parliament, I decided to take a look, an historical view of Jamaica, where we're coming from, where we are, and where we're going. Because at the heart of this is independence versus self-government. The question for me is, did we get independence? Did we get a true independence from our colonial masters? Or did we just get mere self-government, the autonomy to self-govern ourselves? And even though I started it at Marcus Garvey, during the time of Marcus Garvey, I'm going to go far beyond that. Way beyond the Marcus Garvey period in this video. I must say this is going to be a two-part video because research has brought out so much information. It might even end up in a three-part thing because there's no way I can substantiate all of this information that I have gathered in one video. That would be too long. Now, as I said, the contemplation is all about independence versus self-government and how it relates to a political incident that took place in Parliament either a week or two ago, where the very person, where one member of Parliament, in other words, was chastised to be disrespectful, was chastised, called out as being disrespectful, and that the person's action was wrong. And I decided, when I saw that, I said, you know what? Now is the time to take a deep dive of research going all the way back to when this started. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to sit in your seat, relax, and if you have the time, take the time out to listen to this, because this is critical to where we are going, who we are as Jamaican, and who we want to be. Who we want to be. What kind of identity we really want to associate to ourselves with. Because even now, outside of the culture that we created, in terms of music, sports, food, and all of these things, outside of that, politically and socially, we have yet to decide who we want to be in a real way. We have yet to decide that. And I say that because it's important for us to have a true identity, a comprehensive identity of our own. Marcus Garvey was one of the first person, or his political party is one of the first party that was created in Jamaica, or amongst the first that was created, our earliest party that was created. Let me put it that way. Amongst the earliest political party that was created in Jamaica. And what happens is that his push was for self-government. Notice what I said here. His push was for self-government, not for independence. Self-government. But let me leave that as a guide to what I have to say. So let me go back all the way to 1690. In 1690, the first official, look at the period now, 1690, when Jamaica was enslaved and our colonial masters were masters coming out of England. It was during the time of Henry Morgan, the pirate, who went on to become went on to become a governor. Now it was in 1690 that the first official renowned residence was set up for use by the governors of Jamaica. In 1690, the first official residence set up for use by the governors of Jamaica was located in Port Royal. In 1690, we had no governor coming out of Jamaica, only black governor. All our governors were white men. Remember, Port Royal was the home of Henry Morgan, and that's where the first governor's residence was set up, laying the foundation for Henry Morgan himself to become a governor. Now, let me continue. This is coming out of the research that I did. 72 years later, after 1690, which was in now 1762, another governor's residence was constructed in Spanish Town, which by then was the capital of Jamaica. In 1762, Spanish Town becoming the capital of Jamaica. I became the capital of Jamaica. So another governor's house was, one in Port Royal abandoned and the one in Spanish Town set up, was constructed. In 1872, 110 years later, when Kingston became the capital of Jamaica, listen this. When Kingston became the capital of Jamaica, the new residence, now known as King's House, was built at the former home of the Anglican Lord Bishop of the Diocese of Jamaica. The premises, the property which is on now, is the former home of the Lord Bishop, the Anglican Lord Bishop of the Diocese of Jamaica. This new construct was established by was destroyed by an earthquake in 1907, 35 years after it was built. But let me go back to something here, because in 1690, when the first governor's residence was set up in Port Royal, if I give all of my generation preceding generation 70 years to live, that would be 9 generations of my people who suffered. Our suffering started from even before the 9th generation, but I'm talking about here in Jamaica. But when I look at it, it is 9 generations ago that these people, our own people, our own great grandfathers and mothers and sisters and uncles and brothers and sisters and cousins were suffering at the hands of our very colonial masters, the British. And each time the capitalists move around, they built a new governor's mansion. They built a new King's House. It is now named the King's House. Quizzically, when I saw that, I said, but how many times did the king rule in England? Did the king rule in England? When the Queen was in charge of England, why wasn't the name shifted to the Queen of England? The Queen's House instead of the King's House? But that is not here for me to complain. This is not what I want to get across. It's just something that comes across my mind. Now, after the new King's House was built, in 1872, when Kingston became the capital, It was destroyed 35 years later in 1907. Who remember that earthquake? So too the earthquake that shook Port Royal. Kingston earthquake. 1907. The building itself was destroyed. Immediately after the earthquake, the British, Sir, what's his name? Sir Charles Nicholson, a British architect, was commissioned to supervise the rebuilding and restoration of King's House. The job was given to a British man. The slave common labor was our own slave people. The building survived, a few years later, the building survived a major fire in 1908, 1 year later after 1907. So the Kings currently, King's House sits at the same residence since from 1872 when Kingston became the capital. And to this day, it continues to serve as the official residence and office of the Governor General, who serve also to host state and ceremonial functions such as the swearing of our parliamentarians, our minister MPs, Minister of Parliament, and judges of the High Court, and other functions of national importance. To this day, here is where everything dovetails. The incident in Parliament dovetail with this little bit of history that I just highlighted. To this day, King's House represent a symbol of Jamaica's colonial heritage. And ladies and gentlemen, without a shadow of a doubt, the MACE is a part of that colonial heritage. Let me fast forward here to 1962. We got our independence in 1962. Ladies and gentlemen, if you got this far in the video, I'm going to ask you to like, share, leave a comment, click on that notification bell, and also subscribe if you have not done so. And continue to subscribe to this channel because we're going somewhere with it and we need your help to grow it. We want to get it to about 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers. You understand? Because I know the threat hangs over the head of this channel to reduce it to nothing. So we want to have your support. We're asking for your support. As I was saying, to this day, King's House represent a symbol of Jamaica's colonial heritage. This is how it dovetails into the MACE incident involving Angela Burke Brown and the response she got by her action to touch the MACE. Now, in 1962, when we got independence, what did we truly get from Britain? Did we get independence? Or did we get the autonomy to be our own self-government? Which is it we got? Now let me ask a question here. If we got independence, why did they leave the MACE? Why didn't we hand over the MACE to them? Did we ask to retain the MACE? Or did they force us to retain the MACE? Now if we got self-government in 1962, will the same thing apply to us about the MACE? Where we were forced to keep it, or we ourselves volunteered to keep the MACE? Now the MACE is in Parliament, which tells me clearly, let us by a stretch of the imagination, because if we get independence and we still have to retain the MACE, and if we got not independent but self-government, and we have to retain the MACE. It now means our parliamentarians have been operating and functioning under the shadow, in the shadow of the MACE. I know a little about the MACE. It can only be touched by people who are selected, elected, or appointed to use it or touch it. Why so? What's the real importance of the MACE in our system? And especially in the parliamentary system. Why? Why is the MACE normally used at the opening of our parliamentarian period, our parliament, or when we have opening a parliament? Why? These are questions we need to ask, ladies and gentlemen, because I've been asking this for quite some time now. Will the government tell us exactly what we got in 1962? Independence or self-government? As I said, this is just part one of this issue. I'm going to do it partly in about part 3, and I want you to stay tuned for part 2, which will be coming up pretty soon. We'll follow this publication pretty soon, and also part 3, because I think the information coming out is going to be very, very eye-opening for a lot of us in Jamaica. A lot of us. Because we're talking about the MACE that Angela Brown-Burke touches and was chastised, deemed to be disrespectful, and called wrong on all fronts for touching the MACE. Because the MACE can only be touched by a certain set of people. Certain people can only those persons classified as such can touch the MACE. So what is so special about the MACE if we are an independent country? Why do we have a colonial heritage determine how we celebrate, how we do what we supposed to do, our official functions? Why do we have it and continue to have it to this day? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you to welcome to the, I'm going to say again, welcome to the Lennie Robbins YouTube channel. Let's know our politics, come together to create a better understanding for each other. Watch what they do at Lennie Robbins YouTube channel. That's my channel. That's the channel we are here doing. And we don't mind being the lone voice out there in the wilderness, speaking about certain things, because what I know for sure, people will run from the truth. We're not living in a world where truth is the dominance, where truth is dominant, where truth is the dominant discussion, where truth dominates lies. We're living in a world where sensationalism, speculation, and most of all, lies is dominating our airways and our everything. Ladies and gentlemen, blessed love, welcome to the Lennie Robbins YouTube channel. Stay tuned for part 2. It's going to get interesting. Blessed love.